Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to today's episode of Life Matters TV. My name is David McLeod. I'm coming to you from Belmont, California, and I'm here with my good buddy, Tommy Stoffel. We're going to be talking today about pushing buttons. We're going to have some fun with that whole thing. I'm not going to say any more. I'm just going to welcome you, Tommy. Hey, how you doing, bro?
Good, David. Thanks. Happy to be back. Yeah, as you know, I was hanging out with one of our great teachers, Eckhart Tolle, last week, and lots of good insights from that. But today, I'm back, and we're going to talk about, like you said, button pushing. And what is button pushing? Where does it come from? You know, we say it, we talk about it, you know, we bring it up and like, quit pushing my button. And it kind of becomes a little bit of a joke, but it can also impact us, and we can be hurting people, or they can be hurting us. And that's the whole thing, the dynamic we want to talk about. So we're going to, as we do, kind of get into this. And as such, what is button pushing? What is button pushing? So, you know, when this happens, right? You know, and especially there are some people around you who just, they know how to push your buttons. We say it. And there's people who get into these, there's almost like habits where they know what to do, to walk up and say something to you. And then all of a sudden it changes your mood. And it could be a good thing, but usually it's not, right? Usually you're walking around happy and somebody says, you know, I'm tired of you doing this. And oh, there it is again. And you feel like you went from shifting from feeling okay to feeling guilty, or feeling shame, or feeling something. So we play this game with each other. And the way I start to think about it is to think about energy, like we're kind of messing with other people's energy. But before we get into the energy discussion, David, experiences with button pushing, being the pusher or getting pushed, how's that term resonate with you?
Who, me? A button pusher? No. I've never done that. I certainly used to do it a lot before I started doing my personal growth work. It was just kind of a dynamic that I would get myself involved in with certain people. And you know, sometimes it felt like fun, you know, as you mentioned, it was in a way, it was kind of enjoyable watching the reaction that I would get out of people. And maybe there was a part of me that said, oh, look at how powerful I am. Look at how godlike I am. I can just do this little thing over here and you react that way, or I can do this other thing over here and you react a different way. It's like I'm the marionette, you know, pulling what's his name, Pinocchio's strings. And so there was a certain kind of pleasure that I could derive from that. And so, yes, absolutely, I can relate to that. On the other side, you know, there's been times in my life when I don't think I really ever used the words pushing my buttons all that much. But I remember saying things to people like, oh, you make me feel whatever, or you made me do that, or it's your fault that this happened, or this or that. And, you know, and basically taking no responsibility on myself and putting it all out on the people or the person who was in front of me, and who was, in my mind anyway, and in my strange story that I was making up, was doing all the button pushing.
Yeah, exactly true. And you kind of touched upon it, is that we're talking about relationships, right? And we're talking about one-on-one relationships. Let's just kind of narrow it down. I guess you can push multiple people's buttons at once, but we're talking about one-on-one relationships. And when I started looking into this a long time ago, I started looking at kind of the root cause, and it's something that just starts early in our lives, and it goes along with, you know, needing somebody else's approval and needing their, you know, and the approval and disapproval game. But somehow, and then insecurities and fears and domination and all this conditioning that we get caught up in this human race of ours. And what it came down to is that it's just habits, and it's not conscious, right? I don't walk around necessarily saying, I'm going to push somebody's button today. I'm going to piss somebody off today, or I'm going to, you know, make them feel bad today. But we get caught up in these energy games with each other from an early age, in different relationships. And some relationships, if I talk about it this way, some relationships you have a lot of buttons, right? Mm-hmm. There's a lot of hooks. There's a lot of, you know, Marriott strings. And some relationships are light and free, and there aren't buttons. You know, there aren't a lot of expectations set, or there aren't a lot of this energy dynamics set up there. So it's important to understand kind of the concept underneath buttons. And it's basically an energy transfer, right? Somebody pushes your button and gets a charge out of you. They get a rise out of you, they get a fall out of you, they get a cry out of you, they get a yell out of you, they get a scream out of you, they get a sadness out of you, whatever it is. When your button gets pushed, you're pretty much giving away your energy.
Yeah. You know, and this is important too, because I think the underlying desire, or one of the underlying desires in pushing someone else's buttons, I think, as you were talking, it just kind of came clear to me. It's really about having control of the situation. If I believe I have control of the situation, then you can't possibly hurt me. I am protected. I am safe. And part of the way that I make myself safe is in this misbegotten belief that I can just kind of manipulate you and push your buttons and maybe pull your strings and get you to behave in such a way that I feel safe the whole time. And the key point here is it's unconscious, I think, for the most part. I don't think people, generally speaking, I don't think people go out of their way and say, I'm going to see if I can look for a way to push Tommy's button today. I don't think most of us actually go about our lives with that intention in mind. Now, maybe some people do, but I think generally speaking, mostly that's not happening. So I would agree with you that mostly it's unconscious. And I think mostly it's all about keeping ourselves safe. It comes back to the whole ego mind thing about thinking that, well, if I can control you and get you to behave just so and just the way I want, then everything in my life is going to be safe. I'm not going to have to worry.
Yeah, I totally agree, David. And thanks for making that connection of control, because you're right, that is a root cause of it. And I want to take like a childhood example, right? We've got this consummate bully, right? And I'm sure there's been situations in my life when I've kind of been a bully, and I know I've been bullied. So, and I suppose everyone out there has some experience in this bully thing. And if I come from the mindset of a bully, unconscious, right? The bully is trying to get a rise out of you. They're trying to piss you off. They're trying to make you cry. They're trying to control you. And why do they do that? Well, if you really look under the covers of a bully, there's probably a lot of insecurity, a lot of fear. There's a lot of turmoil and trouble and pretty weak. There's weakness. Yeah. Underneath a bully. Mm-hmm. And so they're right. They're kind of like out of control. They've lost control. They want to control, and the way to control is to try to dominate or try to impose their will, try to control a situation. And if that means making somebody else feel worse than they feel, right, that gives them some sense of personal stability or personal okayness. It's right. It's all very convoluted, but you're right. It comes back to this thing to try to control their own environment. And when somebody's coming from a place of weakness because they were probably bullied, you can kind of start to see why people push buttons. And that's an extreme case, but I think it's one that most of us can probably relate to.
Yeah, I think that's a great awareness, this whole idea of weakness. If I think of myself as weak, then especially in your presence or in somebody's presence, if I judge myself as weak in the presence of that person, then I may unconsciously use ego-based strategies to make myself more powerful. And one of the ways I can do that is by making you less powerful. That's the kind of the story that goes on in my head. And maybe that's where the whole button pushing, string pulling, hooking thing happens. It's the idea, if I can manipulate you into looking less powerful, then I will seem more powerful, and therefore I will feel more powerful. And yet, ironically, that as you and I have taught, and as we continue to teach, that is not the way to authentic power. And so we have to kind of find our way through this. We have to first of all be aware that we're doing it, and then we have to kind of get underneath it and start looking at it and saying, okay, what am I really trying to accomplish here?
Yeah, absolutely true. Because it's one of those games that backfires, right? If you're pushing somebody's button and making them angry, or making them hurt, or making them cry, that's just kind of bouncing back on you, both karmically and in that relationship, right? You're distancing that relationship, you're hurting that relationship, where you think, oh, I'm just gonna, if I keep pestering them about cleaning up the dishes, maybe they'll do it someday. Well, that's, we're just causing distance. We're not causing connection. And so, yeah, it's one of those habits that we're in that we need to be aware of, catch, and really watch what we're doing. It's one to, because it's hurting us. It's hurting the relationship. It's hurting us. So, yeah, you're right on that one.
Yeah, and ultimately, really, everything boils down to relationship, doesn't it? I mean, if I can't really think about, obviously, button pushing can't happen in the absence of another person. So it really is all about relationship. Everything that we talk about, I think, is really about relationship and about how we show up with one another. And so I guess the question that I would ask is, how do we get to our authentic power?
Well, one way to get to our authentic power is to stop giving it away and to just, be in it. And the other one is to stop taking it from somebody else, because we don't need it, right? If you're in your authentic power, you don't need any more. Mm-hmm. You're in it, you're connected, you're plugged into the AC, the great AC socket in the wall, and you don't need to push other people's buttons to get a rise out of them, to get a thrill out of them, to get whatever energy, whether good or bad, out of somebody else. We don't need to play that game. That's not authentic. That's not being in your own power. That's almost like being a battery that sits on a shelf by itself, and it's draining, and so you plug your jumper cables into somebody else to get your battery recharged. And that's just, it's the way a lot of people operate, because they forget they're plugged in. But that's a cause of it too, right? We feel like we're losing something. We're losing energy. We're getting drained, and we've got to go get energy somehow. And if we don't get it out of making somebody laugh and giggle, we get it out of making them feel miserable. It's still energy.
Yeah, and you made a really good point there, Tommy. I want to just kind of highlight it. I don't need to go and get my power from somebody else. I don't need to give my power away. I mean, the truth is, I am the power. I am the power that I need for my own life. I don't need any more or any less. Now, that's not to say that I always feel like I'm in perfect, authentic, vulnerable power. Sure, world events happen, things happen around me that sometimes I feel my energy dropping or whatever, but I don't ever need to. I could ask someone to support me when I'm in that space. And by the way, just asking for that support is a form of authentic power, because now I am honoring that person and saying, I trust you enough to help me with this situation right now. And all I want you to do is just hold me and listen to me. That's it. I'll take care of the rest of it. That's where authentic power comes from. It comes from within. It doesn't come from out there. Pushing somebody's buttons isn't going to make any difference. Pulling their strings isn't going to make any difference. It might appear to the ego mind, because we get some kind of reaction. And so we think that we're getting something out of it. But the truth is, it doesn't feel fulfilling in here. My heart is empty when I do stuff like that.
Yeah, empty and emptier. If we're talking about being in this world and we're talking about kind of power and energy, there's neutral power, there's uplifting power, and then there's downward power. And any type of usually a button pushing situation, whether you're on the receiving end or the giving end, is more of a downward power thing. It's usually not neutral, and it's usually not uplifting in this game. Maybe we can learn to push a positive button, right? And there are positive buttons. We do that, right? We do give somebody encouragement. We do tell them we love them. We do, so there are positive buttons. And maybe we just need to focus our attention on the positive buttons and start to let go of the kind of the non-fun games that we play with each other. But it's just more awareness too, right? It's being aware of this. It's something we do in relationship every day.
Right.
And we've been doing it our whole lives.
Well, there's an interesting point there too about the positive buttons. It reminds me that, our brains actually are designed. They're wired to look for the negative situations and to protect ourselves from those negative situations. And this is, I think, why many of us, or why we experience in life that there seems to be an awful lot of complaints going on around us, but not an awful lot of appreciations. And so really the only way we can change that is by recognizing that that's the way our brain's wired, and saying, okay, I understand that it's easy to notice when things aren't going the way I want them to, but how about I make a conscious effort to just recognize when things are going well, and to appreciate those things, and to try and just welcome them more into my life. And furthermore, to take advantage of the not so pleasant things as a way for me to stay in compassion and patience, you know? Because what I need to do as a human being, if I'm going to stop pushing buttons, then I need to recognize when my buttons are being pushed, when I have this story going on in my head that, oh, you are doing this to me, and say, oh, wait, no, this person's not doing it to me. This person's just doing what he or she does, and I'm choosing the reaction.
Yeah, choosing the reaction, or the reaction's coming out of us, whether we're aware of it or it's just, habitual. This person calls me on the phone and says, oh, where you been? You haven't talked to me in 2 months. And all of a sudden, that's their guilt hook, and you start feeling guilty. Well, they're just saying they haven't talked to you in 2 months. And you're like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And then they make it their jerk of energy, right? And the sorry is they're it's like people are fishing, right? It's like where people are standing on a pier and they've got the line over the side and they're fishing for energy. And they don't care they don't care if they catch an unedible catfish from the bottom, or if they catch, they don't care what they catch. They're just,
or a tire.
Right, they catch a tire. That's a great one. So yeah, people are fishing for energy, fishing for attention, fishing for compliments,
yeah,
fishing for a reaction. So I start to look at this game as almost like people are fishing, and you can start, if you think of it that way, you can start to see them coming.
The situation that you mentioned about the person on the phone, you haven't called me in 2 months. My response to that is I would say something like, yeah, you're right. It has been 2 months since we spoke.
Yeah.
In other words, I'm not taking responsibility for it. We both have the ability to pick up the phone and call the other person. It's not one person's fault or the other person's fault, unless some kind of an agreement was made beforehand. But, so I just try and diffuse it. And I say, yeah, you're absolutely right. We haven't connected for 2 months, and it would be nice to reconnect. Just leave it at that. That diffuses the button right off the bat.
Yeah, that diffuses the button. It starts to dismantle your button. You're not biting the hook, right? You're not taking the bait. You're not, because that just starts a fight, right? And then you're hooked. Then you're on the line, and then oh yeah, well, last month before that, you didn't call me for blah 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 blah, and I haven't seen an email from you for so blah 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 blah. Well, yeah, and, right? And you're just you're throwing barbs and throwing hooks at each other, and pretty soon your relationship is what? No good, no fun.
Yeah, it's a challenge for sure, and ultimately, I think we're here in relationship to be in love with one another. And I don't mean in love in the romantic sense. I mean sharing love, creating love and sharing love and being a mutual channel of love so that it can flow back and forth between us. And that doesn't mean to say that all of our interactions are going to be perfect. Sometimes things are going to be difficult, and that's okay. But I don't have to blame you for what's going on in me. And you don't have to blame me for what's going on in you. It's what we need to do, I believe, as individuals, is take responsibility for our own lives. As you've said so many times, I have a sphere of influence that extends out a certain distance, and I have a way of showing up that does impact the world, absolutely. But how it impacts the world, I have some control over that, and how people react to it. Well, I can take so much responsibility, but after that, they have to take responsibility for their own reactions. Yeah,
Miguel Ruiz talks about in The Mastery of Love, being in a relationship with two people, and you're really only responsible for your half of the relationship.
Right.
The relationship is your responsibility. So when we talk about this game of button pushing between two people, right? Making the other person stop pushing your button is not your job. making the other person stop behaving the way they're behaving, not your job. That's what you're talking about, right? Responsibility, taking responsibility. It's your responsibility to learn how not to have a button that gets pushed.
Yeah.
It's your responsibility to be conscious and aware enough not to shoot an arrow back at them.
Right. That's the key right there. I think that's the key. You know, my responsibility, well, I think I'd like to rephrase it a little bit. It's not my responsibility not to have the button in the first place, because I probably do. You know, I probably do have the button. My responsibility is to notice when that button gets pushed and I'm feeling the reaction, is to say, oh, I don't have to say this out loud, but in my own mind, I can say, oh, look at that. I'm having a reaction now. How do I want to deal with this reaction? Maybe part of how I deal with it is to tell the person I'm in relationship, you know, that what you just said, what you just did, I notice that I'm having a reaction to that, and I just want to process it. I'm not asking you to change anything. I just want you to be aware of it. You know, I can do this compassionately. I can do this without turning it around, finding the opposite end of their button pushing finger, breaking the finger and pointing it right back at them. I can do it without all that stuff, you know?
Yeah, and it's brilliantly spoken. And when you do, that relationship just instantly gets much nicer and much cleaner.
Yeah.
Just because you decided not to react. So you early on, you said, you know, we react, we get pulled into a situation. And everything we talk about, David, here at Life Matters, everything we do and say helps people get a little more space, a little less crowded in the head, a little more space. And that space buys you a ticket to be able to respond, to choose a response instead of knee-jerk reacting. It's the knee-jerk react that fires the arrow back and gets into a fight and breaks their finger off and points it back at him, as you so eloquently said. And having just a moment. And sometimes, you know what, some people have to get used to not seeing anything, right? Because we're so used to somebody pushing our buttons, and we immediately, the reaction is we immediately fire back, or we get angry, or we get pissed off, or we, you know, rah, 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 rah. And just the presence and a little bit of consciousness to just at least pause. So you can do what you said, right? You feel it, you're like, oh, I do that too, David. I go, oh, I felt that one. Okay. And you do this in fast motion, right, in your head, but oh, that felt uncomfortable. What's going on inside me? Not pointing the finger and saying, you idiot, why did you say this? But you're like, oh, I felt something. All right, now I need to look into that one. And to say it, to have the presence, David, to say, right now I need to process that. That takes presence. If you can't quite get there in some of these big relationships, just pause. Just for a second. And there'll be some wisdom that'll come in through you, either to stay quiet or to not fight back. Maybe that's step one, is just to not retaliate, instant retaliation. And so it's these hooks and these buttons and these things are throughout our lives, and we've been doing it for a long time. So to step one, like you said, is to just feel it and go, oh, that hurt. I got something going on, and just give yourself that pause.
Yeah. You know, when you were talking about the word react, I don't know what about you, but when I think of that word react, it's always tied to the word reactor, which makes me think of a nuclear explosion.
Nice.
So I don't know, man. I'd rather not react at all. I would rather respond. Or, you know, I don't know. I know that some people have taken the word responsibility and talked about responding with ability. Yeah, that doesn't really work for me, but I guess it might work for some people, you know. But I like the idea of responding, because responds has a lot less energy associated with it, the word anyway. And so I can imagine myself responding from a place of compassion and patience, and still giving myself permission to feel, to allow the energy to move through me and thus get processed. So I think that's very, very important. First, just notice and feel. And then once you've done that much, Now you can begin the process of deciding exactly how you want to respond.
Yep. Yep. And initially, especially in a heated situation that comes up every day, maybe not responding is a perfectly good response. So David, I'd like to walk everyone through a procedure, a process, some steps to take that could help you. Actually, we'll do an exercise and teach you what it feels like to actually dismantle a button.
Absolutely.
So what I do when I talk about this is, you know, when we talked about buttons, everyone out there immediately goes, oh, and and one person pops into your mind who's your major button pusher. We're not starting with them, right? We need to learn this technique. It's a technique, and it's like a self-energy preservation technique, and we need to learn it slowly and gently, because all of these relationships have so many buttons and everything. We don't want to just start with your partner. You don't want to start with your mom. You don't want to start with your kid. So I call those your tier 1 relationships. Put those aside for now. When you get a little good at this, a little better at this, you can maybe you'll bring one of those in later.
Yeah.
Your tier 2 relationships are, you know, maybe your sisters, your brothers, you know, your best friends, people who are close to you and you interact with on a regular basis, and they have the potential, the ability to push a button once in a while. You push theirs. We're not talking about them either right now. Think of a tier 3 person. Maybe somebody at work, maybe a fellow worker, maybe a boss, maybe you know, a relationship that's kind of in that tier 3 level, and you right now have a name and an image in your head. Somebody's come up. So what I want you to do, and if you need to close your eyes to do this, go ahead. Or you can keep it open and just think about it. I want you to remember the last time that you got into a conflict with that person, you got into a situation, or the last time they pushed your button, the last time they made you feel crappy, the last time they changed your mood. And I want you to remember that situation, where you were, what happened, how it got initiated, and how you felt. And you can think through of how you reacted, what you did. Did you cry? Did you get angry? Did you get, not again? Did you know, at work you had to keep it bottled up? Did you stuff it down inside? Whatever that was, feel it. Feel it right now. All right. Now here's what I want you to do. Now in your mind's eye, in your mind, this is a technique of visualization. I want you to now know what you know about button pushing, and know that, you know, it's an energy game. Know that the other person is just doing what they do because that's how we've been grown up and taught and conditioned. And that person now is coming to you again in your mind, and you know what they're going to do. It's almost like slow motion. You see them coming, and you know they're going to throw the hook. You know they're going to push the button, and they do it. They say it. They do it exactly what they did last time. Boom, there it is. Now I want you just to sit. Whether you have to imagine that you're a screen door and it goes through you, if you want to see yourself as Neo and dodging out of the way of a bullet, whatever image you want to do to just kind of let that situation happen, and give yourself just a moment to pause. That's all you need to do right now. That's it. I'm not going to tell you how to respond. I'm not going to, you're not going to say what you're going to say or something clever to disarm it. Just, you're going to give yourself that pause. And the wisdom inside of you in that moment, in that pause, in that brief space, whether it's even a half a second, there's going to be wisdom that's going to come up in you, and it's going to say, stay quiet this time. It's going to say, don't fight back. It's going to say, don't say what you usually say. And be with that. So that's the practice. The first few times you try this and do this, try this on that person that you came up in your mind. The first few times you may just react, but then you're going to catch yourself a few minutes later and go, oh, this is what David and Tommy were talking about. Oh, okay, this is I got my button pushed. Oh, all right. And then the next time you're going to have a little more. You're going to catch it a little sooner. Maybe it's the second after it happened. You're going to go, oh, I did it again. I reacted, but okay, next time. Right? And make a game of it. Make a game of it. And that's my practice, and that's my recommendation, and that's our things for you to do today. David.
Yeah. So that's a great practice for people to do. I mean, it goes along with all the practices that we offer in pretty much all of our shows, which is really all about awareness and feeling and making a choice. Ultimately, everything just boils down to a choice. So one of my favorite questions, and I haven't actually shared this too much on this show, but it's something that kind of came more into my awareness in the past couple of weeks. A great question is this a loving thing to do? Am I coming from love when I do this? Or to phrase it a little differently, how would I react if I were coming from love? How would I respond if I were coming from love? I mean, it's a great question. And when I ask it, it definitely slows me down. And I think about what I'm doing. And I actually do find myself going to that place of pausing. So love is the answer, really. There's not much else we can say.
Yeah, you just that place of pausing, and an image came up in my head. I'm turning my tender button into a pause button.
Yeah,
it's like pause, just pause. So try that, folks. Go ahead and try that. You've got somebody in mind. Do not try this on your partner tonight. Do not try this on your mom or dad or kid tonight. Do not do a tier 1. You need to practice this a little bit first, and you'll know why once you do it a little bit.
Right.
All right, David.
So next week, folks, we're going to be talking about, well, one of the things that we have noticed is that people seem to be rushing around a lot, trying to get everything done in their life and all the rest of it. But we believe that life is not a race. So next week, we're going to talk a little bit about that and bring some wisdom in our usual fashion and have some fun with it too. So see you all next week.
Bye, everybody.